Where do I even start with today's wonderful guests? I am so happy to have Benj and Jennifer Derkin here on the Unmeasured podcast with me. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
You all knew about the podcast before it was ever a real, living, breathing thing. They were they were over here at the house taking photos to use for the podcast art for my website. We were doing pretend photos with this microphone, and now it's really plugged into we're actually recording something now.
This is so exciting.
I love it so much.
We really are so honored to be here. We're such big fans and friends, but huge supporters of everything that you're doing. So when you reached out, we were like, we get to be on? Okay, let's do it.
Well, the feeling is so mutual. And for anyone who does not know Benj and Jennifer Derkin already, they are the owners of Dirk's Works, and they are photographers focusing on authenticity of relationships. And you two do that so well. You do it so beautifully. I feel like the luckiest because you've captured so many really meaningful, significant, like pivotal moments in my life, in our family's life, so many memories that I'm going to get to look back on and that, my kids will have in the future will be your work. And I just feel so thankful to you personally and just really excited for people to get to hear your incredible insight because today's question is about pictures. It's about photos. And a listener wrote in and said, I really struggle to feel comfortable being in photos. Any tips for the upcoming season that are full of family photos, then holiday pictures, and more? Also, I would love any support for navigating when you see a photo of yourself that you don't like. Thanks. I mean, who better to have on for this than you two, right? Also, you are the first husband and wife duo ever on the Unmeasured
Yay!
podcast. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I
Well,
love
now
it.
we feel doubly honored.
Well,
We're
thank
just
you.
missing Tim.
We're
And
missing. He's
then...
never coming on this podcast. He's already told me. Tim doesn't want anything to do with this podcast. I've tried to pitch him different ideas. I've gotten questions where I'm like, "How this would be so great. We could do this together." And he's like, "It's a no." He'll just have to be here in spirit with us.
Aw, well, we feel very honored. I resonate so much with this question, not just because it's what we do, but as someone who has also been on the other side of the camera and felt some of those same feelings. So I'm really grateful for this question. And I think the conversation is something that most anyone can relate to a certain degree.
Jennifer, yes, I could not agree more. I think this is something that probably everyone has felt many times in
Yes.
their life,
100%.
right? Super relatable. And I feel like a great place to start is just with a reminder that it's very normal to see a photo of
Yes.
yourself and to not love it. Like let us set appropriate expectations for ourselves as human beings. Number one, when else in history has anyone seen as many photos of themselves as we are
Yes.
seeing now, right?
From
Way more
any
images.
angle,
Yes.
in any moment.
If I could also add to that, as photographers, we haven't updated our pictures since 2001.
Yeah.
And we went into that photo shoot for ourselves, by ourselves, mind you, kicking and screaming.
Yes.
And
Struggling with all of the same things.
those are the pictures we're still using, because I'm balder now, and I don't know that I want to get another headshot taken. But I have the privilege to be able to speak to so many people to this point, and I'm thrilled to be talking about this here on this podcast. Simi, I already mentioned, because we use your words to our
Often.
couples, to our clients, to our families all the time, as we share how to navigate this. But base level, you're not alone. Like, everybody feels this way. Photographers feel this way. Models feel this way. Everybody feels this way. It's literally an actual job to be photographed, even as a model. So like, it is it is hard to put yourself in a position of vulnerability where you are allowing a photographer to see you and to see your family and to see the dynamics of everything that's going on, and to let that be real and not a version of yourself that you wish that you were.
So beautifully said. When you said, you're not alone, that is such a great message for people to hear right off the bat. The purpose of this podcast episode and our conversation is not to give people tips so that at the end of this conversation, they're going to say, great, now I know exactly what to do to love every picture of myself, right? So, like,
Now I know how to win this.
yeah, right? Okay, yes, I have everything I need. No, like a baseline, let's set expectations. You're going to see pictures of yourself that you don't
Yep.
like. Everybody does. You are not alone. And it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the way that you look. It doesn't mean there's anything
Counts.
wrong with who you are. And I think what we make an experience mean about us is where so much of the like pain of an experience can come from, right? If you see a picture of yourself that you don't like, and what you make it mean is, yeah, this happens to everyone, like moving right along, kind of
Yep.
so what? Or, acknowledging this is how I feel and it doesn't have to mean anything about me, versus seeing a picture of yourself that you don't like and making it mean that there's something wrong with you or there's something about you that needs to be fixed. And so I love that we're all on the same page with this, like right off the bat, because everyone can just take the pressure off of themselves
Yes.
to love every photo that you see.
Yeah.
Not going to
And
happen.
I was just thinking it is a pressure you have to just let go of because it doesn't serve you well. And I can look back, and I'm sure we can probably resonate with this, where you like look at a picture of you from 10 years ago and you're like, wow, I would love to look like that version of myself again. When in all actuality, that person 10 years ago was spiraling after they saw that photo. Or, I mean, but my dear husband has seen me sit in the closet crying, like, I don't have anything to wear. I can't do this, or whatever these emotions would be that would almost just stifle any of the potential joy. And so instead of looking back on that version of you saying, that's who I wish I could be now, just know that the person in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or we'll talk about it with families in particular, will look back, your children will look back on that, on your wedding photos, on the family session, and be like, oh, that was my mom. That was my dad. That was me as a little kid. That was the way we used to play. Whatever that is, it's an emotion and a moment and a memory that far supersedes the coordination of your outfits, or the way your hair fell, or the perfect body position for your arm to look good. Like, those will not be the things that you will remember and cherish and look back on and crave. Um, and so releasing that pressure to say this doesn't have to be A, I'm not alone, and B, it the version of perfect that I might have in my mind probably isn't even true to the season or true to who I am. And in full transparency, guys, we got coffee before this. Simi, Benjamin, and I, we got to hang out. But we were talking about other things in life, parenting, and it just feels so good to recognize that I'm not alone in this feeling, and that there is a different maybe starting point I should have had or could have now to take the pressure off of this particular situation, whether it be family photos or whether it be something else.
Absolutely. I know that I've shared this with you too before, but I had this really sort of like paradigm shifting moment around photos when my dad passed away.
Yeah.
And we were going through all of these photo books and, pictures of him from his childhood and adolescence and early adulthood, all these photos from, Yugoslavia, like these photo books.
Yeah.
And then also pictures of him with my sister and pictures with him and me and with my mom. And, you know, my dad, although I feel that he had to leave us, it felt like too soon. He lived a really long life. He looked a lot of different ways in these pictures, right? His body changed, his face changed, some of them were pretty candid, not necessarily like posed and he's smiling and looking straight at the camera. There wasn't anything about these photos that were, perfectionistic.
Mm-hmm.
But as we were going through them, I was so grateful for every single one because at this point, that's what I have of my dad, right? I have
Mm-hmm.
my memories. I have
Mm-hmm.
memories that other people are willing to share with me. And I have these photographs, and that's it. And so to think that he might have seen some of these photos and thought like, "Oh, this is a bad picture.
Mm.
I'm gonna get rid of this," or like, "I'm gonna burn it or rip it up," or whatever.
Right.
To think that I would be sitting here and not have that picture to, like, remember him by is
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just so glad that that wasn't the case, and I think also seeing him, changing over the years, aging, body changes, all those things that
Yeah.
happen to us as human beings, there was no part of me sitting looking at these pictures saying like, "Well, my dad this year versus my dad that year, he looked a lot better
Yeah.
this year than he did that year."
Right.
I just loved every single one of them, and I think that for me, that really shifted
Mm-hmm.
the way that I think about photos of myself moving forward. I just want to be in as many photos as possible. I want as many
Mm-hmm.
family photos as possible. I want to really capture those things because there will be a day when that's all that, my
Yep.
loved ones have of me. And I want them to have as many as possible, not because I think I look particularly amazing in these photos, but because
Yeah.
it's about something more.
Yeah.
And those emotions that lead up to those photos too, I think often I remember the Olin Mills family photo sessions that were, that we had all the perfect posing. But more than anything, I remember the stress leading up to those.
Mhm.
And I want to go back and tell, my own mom and a version of myself now, even preparing for family photos, of those emotions will mean more than the perfect composition of that photo or what we define as perfect,
Mhm.
and how to relinquish that and embrace the season that we're in. Because if you think about your favorite photos of you as a child or some of your favorite photos of your parents in different seasons or your grandparents or people who are no longer with us, it's usually way more the emotions of that shared moment. So, how do you go into your wedding day or a family session and allow yourself to have a headspace that says, I'm going to be present? And even the photos of yourself. Some of my favorite photos of Benjamin and I are the ones of me just not worrying about, am I smelling with my teeth or my lips? Is my arm the right way? But I'm fully hugging my child or
You're just
enjoying
there.
the moment
Yeah.
with Benjamin. I mean, literally one of my favorite wedding photos, and I had lots of anxiety around them, was walking into our reception and my hands just like throwing up in the air, so excited. I'm surrounded by everyone, sitting down at the table with like our family closest to us, and not necessarily because they were the perfectly composed image, but the essence of what I felt in that moment was captured in that photo. And that made me feel so beautiful and so full. And that's somewhat of how we try to approach our photography as well. So there's a couple facets, right? There's how we where we are going into that time of capturing
Oh, I'd
photos,
so much
especially if
rather.
professional
Yeah,
photos are
I'd so much
considered.
rather have a family arrive 5 minutes late and feel unified and
Yes.
ready to go
And enjoy the moment.
than 30 seconds early and stressed because they had to blow through 3 yellows to get here on
And
time,
that's a metaphor for life. I feel like that's
Yeah.
a great metaphor for life. Like, be 5 minutes late if it means you
Be
can
five
show
minutes
up.
late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a whole. And we people ask us all the time, like, what should I wear for our photo sessions? And I always start with, wear what is most authentic to you. Wear what makes let your kids wear what makes them feel good. Like, I always love it when a child shows up with a random superhero cape or, whatever it might be. Now, granted, some kids show up and everyone's perfectly coordinated, and that's beautiful. And
That
that might work really well
looks good
too.
too.
But in the order of hierarchy, of priorities, just to remind yourself that feeling confident in who you are, letting your children express who they are, those really will create the pictures that you look at and you love. And it won't be because of some of these other things that maybe we just need to like release the pressure on. Now, to that end, if you have choices and have options, sure, here are some tips, but that's not where to begin. So we try to approach what we do in our work with that emotional component and the authenticity of relationship that you mentioned in mind.
Yeah, I think this brings up a point that we talked a little bit about over coffee, which is what's the purpose of the pictures that you're taking? Is the purpose of the pictures that you're taking to have a specific thing for a magazine cover? Well, sure, that's going to have a very different shoot setup than to enter into a family session where the goal is to make pictures about your family and not of your family, and to make pictures that are describing how you love your kids and how tightly they squeeze around your neck right now, and how fast they can run, and how, like, I mean, there's all sorts of different things that are part of your family right now. To me, that is a photograph that is the one that you'll cherish later. Not all photo sessions are that way. Some, like, there's a lot of photo sessions that we get to show up for that are strictly for a holiday card, and they really, really want everybody looking at the camera and smiling and wearing the Christmas sweater. And that is fine. If you know that that's what you're after, then that's what you're after. But I would challenge just the everyday thought of pictures to expect more, to look for more out of your pictures than just people looking at the camera. Because in a lot of ways, that's it is very difficult to get everybody to look at the camera, but it's also easy. Like that's a movement. But to get a picture of your family and of the interactions and of the love and care that you all have for each other in that moment, that's hard, and that's going to last longer.
I think it's what you're talking about feels more like these photos are capturing who you are, in a moment in time, in a season of life, versus just how you look. It can really capture an emotion or a relationship dynamic. And you mentioned, like, how fast can your kids run? I mean, I don't know that we've had a single photo session. I mean, except when Osh was a newborn, right? I guess when you came over and shot like photos of him as a newborn.
And he couldn't run.
Yeah, and he couldn't run. He was, chilling out like a little babe. But since then, I don't know that we've done a single set of family photos where it hasn't been, like Sonic the Hedgehog, like blurring in the background. And
what Pokemon character do you want to be now, bud? Yeah,
totally. And that is where we are right now. That is this season of life, and you capture it so beautifully, and you capture it in a way where I think this whole idea of what a picture should be and the pressure that we put on ourselves to look a certain way, whether it's a picture of, just you, or a picture of your family, or a picture of you and your partner at your wedding, or whatever it might be, like this idea of what it should be versus like what it actually is. And you mentioned the word vulnerable. It is vulnerable to really be seen for what it actually is.
Yeah.
And you all do it in such a beautiful way where I think it's a little natural to feel some sense of like shame, like, oh, I'm bad if it can't look exactly like what it should look like.
Yeah.
You all do such a beautiful job of making what it is be what it needs to be, right? Where you're like, yeah, the kids can be running. All of a sudden, as a mom, I can let go of the shame that I'm supposed to show up for this photo shoot, and everyone's supposed to, like, be in a line like The Sound of Music.
Right.
And that's with my crew. It's not The Sound of Music, no one's like lining up on the stairs.
To your point earlier, that like you're not alone in that. And
Yeah.
I think we've had some beautiful sessions, and especially when we do something called a mini session, which is really short, which is great because sometimes kids' attention is not that long, but it also could sometimes do the opposite for people where they need time to warm up. But we've had sessions where it's like, you know what, this is the year where this kid kind of cried, and the only way they were happy is if we all walked in a line and played a silly game. But you know what? That was when so and so was that old. And I think I shared this with you, but like our children have been in weddings, our children have been photographed. And I love that for one particular wedding, for your brother's wedding, Solomon walked down the aisle with he's got a lot of cute stuffies. Okay. Like a lot of cute ones.
Oh.
I even brought some of the cute Jellycat ones.
Oh,
you
I
know,
know.
where
Totally.
you're
Those
like,
Jellycat ones are so cute.
yeah, where you're like, I've got this moment, right?
It had a good color story.
Yeah, it like,
It's right.
if you're gonna walk down, look at this cute little teddy you can hold while
Mhm.
you do it. That was not the case. Solomon wanted a stuffed Mario that he had gotten with, the classic red Mario hat and his pacifier in his mouth. And you know what? That's how he went down the aisle. But he did it. He went down. It's an adorable memory now. My mom moment in that moment where my mom perspective was like, of all the things he's doing. But if I could have let that go, I could have seen it in the moment and in the photo
Yeah.
5 years later.
It's-
So just embracing that season. And I've been the mom where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to get pregnancy photos. I don't know if I want to be in this particular image or this moment because I'm not wearing the right thing or I'm not doing the right thing. And all I will say is so far in my parenting journey and in my own personal journey, I could go back and speak to that version of myself. I would say, let that all go and just be present with your kids because those will be the moments.
Mhm.
And I had a really great friend of ours and who was also a photographer, and she took some photos for us. And I was pregnant with Olivia, our youngest. And she was like, can I do some pictures of just you? And for my first, I did not have pregnancy photos. For my second, I did not have pregnancy photos. And for the third, I was trying to do a family group photo and I was also pregnant. And I let her, and I'm so glad that I did. So allowing yourself to enter those vulnerable spaces, finding the right group of friends or support before or after might also be really helpful. And it's okay to look at some and be like, I really don't like those, but I really love these. And trying to let yourself focus on what you do love and what was captured versus the things that might be something that you're like, oh, I don't really love that one. That's not my favorite face.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that curation process. Like that is
Totally.
over half of our job is like,
Yeah.
how do we curate these 1,000 pictures down to these 150? Like that's.
But the big
part of
laugh
it.
and the joy of the moment always means more than the TikTok poses that you tried to memorize before your shoot, right?
Totally. And with like 150, like you said, you are curating it down from thousands to 150
Yeah.
images. Someone gets 150 images. Like think about 150 of anything else. Like if I line up 150 strawberries in front of you and have you take a bite of every single one of them, are they all going to taste the same? No. Are some
No.
maybe going to be, like not ripe enough or whatever it might be? There are going to be strawberries in that line.
They're mushy strawberries.
Yeah,
They're tart
right.
strawberries. It
Like,
happens.
oh, this one's moldy. Like, I don't want to eat it. And
Ask
so
my son. He gets very worried about strawberries because he never knows what he's gonna get.
that's how Osh is too. He's like, Mom, is that mold on there? I don't think so. Which try it and tell me. So I feel like we have these weird expectations that if we don't love all 150, that
Yeah.
like we're doing something wrong. No way.
Mhm.
What 150 of
Mhm.
anything are you going to love every single one of?
Mhm.
No way.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's not possible. And I think the theme that I'm really pulling out of what you all are sharing, which I don't even think before this conversation, if I realized that this was going to be a main theme, it's surprising me. It's surprising and delighting me, but that there's this theme of acceptance. It's like,
Mhm.
can we accept this season of life? Can I
Mhm.
accept that this is what is, right? Without making it mean anything else. And
Yeah.
you all do such a beautiful job of capturing like the heart and the emotion of a moment. And I know that I've heard you share a little bit about something. Is it called emotional posing? Is that?
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, emotional posing. Will you share a little bit about what that is and how you use it, but also how people can use it, like even if
Yes.
they're, taking pictures of themselves, like, with friends or a group or
Mhm.
whatever, like
Mhm.
what is that concept and how does it enhance the experience of having photos taken, being in photos, looking back on photos, like having
Yeah.
these memories?
You shared technically what it is because he really kind of came up with it. And then I feel like it's something that I also try to use when I am shooting,
Yeah.
but I think I've been the recipient of in shifting my perspective um just in my own life as well. So
Yeah. Well, I mean,
technically,
so I
and it's not a very technical term.
yeah, right.
With it.
We made it up as far as I know.
I love it.
But the
It's trademarked and
Yes,
copyrighted
yeah,
by
now
Jerks Works.
the uh the core of it is understanding that in any given picture you've got to fill it with something, and not just a people, right? And it's really easy as a photographer to make a a picture about a pose and about, like, getting your fingers just right, like we talked about Ola Mills, and like all of the, like,
your head
well,
needs
make
to be
sure
at
that
this
this hand is
degree
like
and
this and
yeah.
this head tilt and this like this. And there are, like, just from a practical perspective, I don't want to say that there aren't little things that you can do that helps, like, make you look a little slimmer and a little, like, less just head on. Like, so there are some of those things that are really good. But if that's the focus, like, not intending a pun there, but like if that's the primary thing that your picture is about, then it's not going to be as much about the people or the relationships involved. So emotional posing enters into the picture when, again, pun not intended, when
There's so many photography.
when you start with um, a bit of poetry or a bit of a song lyric or a bit of um, a kind word spoken between family members, or um, actually a specific action, game, thought, quote, introspection that allows you to concentrate most of your effort on something that is not how you're standing. And I think that we've already touched on it a little bit, is that when you go back and you look at a picture of a moment, you're taken back to that moment.
That feeling,
And
that
that
space.
feeling, right? Just all the components of what happened and how you felt in that moment. Similar to um, the memory of going over to grandma and grandpa's house and smelling cookies. Like, then you smell chocolate chip cookies over here and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember my grandma and grandpa, and always had that cookies jar in the weird bottom little cupboard that didn't hold anything else.
But you
Those are the things that you're trying to, like, attach to in that moment, and then the picture reflects that moment and not just how you're standing.
Right. It's so
it's
much more meaningful than what is it called? Like the sorority arm. Is that a thing that people do? Do you
yeah,
know what I'm talking
right?
about? Like where it's like
Yeah.
a sorority arm.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it's like if the photo's about the sorority arm versus if the
You'll
photo's
really
about
see
yeah,
it.
You'll see
if
it,
the
right.
photo's about this, really, not that you're having anyone do the sorority arm. It's just like something that came to mind
Sometimes.
when when you're talking about, like certain poses. I feel like that's a real popular one. And I think
But then, like, the
Your next
practical, of
family
course, it's
session is
like,
gonna have a
if you do
sorority.
have, like, a little bend to your elbow and you kind of, like, keep your arm a little ways away from your body, just, like, don't overthink it. But, like,
yeah,
those are good, like, little physical tips that, like,
yeah,
that help.
totally.
But when you're doing that in your photos, like
Yeah.
what that might look like or feel like is on your way, let's say you are doing family photos. On your way there, put your favorite song on in the car with the kids, right? Have that family car dance party prepping you versus like, I told you to iron your shirt. Like, just letting those things go and getting in the right headspace. It also means, like, if you're just with an iPhone hanging out with your kids, when you're sitting next to them and someone's taking a picture, instead of being like, oh no, I need to change the way I'm seating, maybe my bangs aren't right, to say like, I just love seeing George feel so excited right now about what he just opened, you know, or whatever that means, that moment, that emotion that you can attach to. We also sometimes share song lyrics with our clients, or when I'm doing family photos, I'll have everybody hold hands and I'll literally be like, all right, you have 3 seconds. I want you to look each person in the eyes and whisper, I love you. And so they all look each other in the eyes and whisper, I love you. And sometimes they laugh or they end up in a big hug or whatever it might be. But it's taking that moment away from the purely physical components of it to the emotional heart of what could be captured.
Your brain's going to be focused on something. Like your brain needs to be filled with something. And so the idea of emotional posing is how do we fill that space with so much about the other stuff, the relationship, that you're not able to focus only on how your arm is positioned. Workouts are the same way, right? Like when you go work out,
He works out so much.
I'm like a big,
I love you tried to pull this one.
I'm a big workout person.
You guys, he pulled workouts and
obviously.
smelling. He has no sense of smell. So he's doing a really good job, you know? But I think what you're trying to say is like, not just the outcome or how hard you can push yourself, but rather how you feel about what you're doing.
Yes. You know, I support that. I 100%.
100%.
I 100% support that. I absolutely love this concept. I've also been on the receiving end of this, and it really does help you to be so in the moment with whoever you're in the photo with. You all do such a good job of prompting this. I'm curious, do you have like favorite song lyrics or quotes, or is it just whatever
Yes.
pops into your mind in the moment? Like, do you have somewhere you're like, this is like, these are my like gold ones that I love?
I have a saved note on my phone, literally, of like posing lyrics. And I'm trying to grow that so I can reference it. And then I highlight keywords so I can like glance to it and be like, oh, this one really pulls out this word that feels relatable to this client. And then we do have a little bag of tricks of like certain
I've
things.
got a small notebook that I've been building for the past
so romantic.
10
years.
15 years. Yeah. That's just it's a slow build.
I don't mean to sound trite or even trying to like speak too boldly of ourselves in the perspective of, I think one of the reasons this is at the core of how we shoot is because it really is at the core of how we try to have our own relationship and our own family, and we do it imperfectly. So please don't hear this as like, this is how we live every photo shoot, or this is how we live our own life. Spend any amount of time with me and you will know that that is not the case. But it is maybe a core desire of how we try to move forward with our family. Our relationship is trying to let go of the things that you could easily hold on to that can distract you from the core of what you really share and what you really value. Same thing with our children. It's easy to want them to look a certain way or behave a certain way, and I forget to see them for who they are. So trying to have that perspective, I think, fuels our photography as well.
You two are so authentic in your relationships. I mean, with each other, with your friends, with your clients, with your kids, like with your community. I see it so much, and it comes as like no surprise that what is at the core of who you are and how you choose to live your life and in your relationships, like that's a choice. It takes intention. It takes, it takes work. I'm not surprised at all that it is also like central to the work that you do and the kinds of images that you capture. Like I just think that I don't think that you two could be any other way, in your work, because it's how you are. It's how you are in your lives.
Well, you know me very well. Like
I feel so blessed.
I know. I feel blessed. And it literally is a phrase for all of you listening. Like Simi is just so full of so much lived wisdom and kindness but Benjamin will often be like, what would Simi say? And I don't take it as like, I'm like, oh, you're right. I need to change that inner dialogue in my head or whatever it might be. And for those of you who maybe have heard of or watched Bluey, I have to give this Bluey reference because there's an episode where a friend comes over and plays at Bluey's house. This is a cartoon dog show for those of you who don't know, but it is full of wisdom. And they play a certain really silly way at Bluey's house. And this friend goes home and wants to play that same silly way with their dad, but their dad is much more like scientific and factual. And so the kid kind of gets like, why can't you play this other way? And then throughout this like 5-minute episode, they somehow do this beautiful poetic way of the dad researches these animals that they were playing. They learn something else about what they actually do in nature, and then they incorporate that into their play, and the joy is there. So I also want to be mindful of, it's not about us just bringing how we live to our clients, but trying to help pull out the most authentic, real versions of that particular client. And for someone like you guys who we get to work with on a regular basis and know really well, it's such a joy. But that can happen with someone who maybe you don't know as well too. But it can definitely happen as an inner work in yourself to say, what am I most proud of and who am I and how can I apply those things when it comes to pictures or when it comes to what I'm choosing to wear or what I say to myself before I open up social media or before I look at the photos that I get back from my wedding. What am I reminded of what really matters and what I'm most proud of? And I can't wait to see that in those images.
I would say that probably like my core philosophy when it comes to body image, which of course, we're talking about body image, like how you see yourself in these photos, is look at it less and live in it more. And I think that it sort of applies on both ends of this, right? Like it applies in the moment of the photo. It's like, rather than thinking about like, how is this going to look, live in the moment, be in the moment.
Yeah.
But I also think sort of, post after you get photos or you're looking at photos, like if you are looking at photos and for whatever reason it's feeling hard or it's feeling challenging, like put the photos down, step away from the photos and go live in your life. And that will be so helpful. We project a lot of things onto images of ourselves. And I've had the experience of seeing a picture and not liking it, and literally days later seeing the picture again and thinking, what was the issue that I had with this picture? And I think when you get professional photos back, right? Like whether it's for a holiday card or wedding pictures or family photos, there's a buildup to that. And you felt maybe an internal pressure leading up to the photos. The email comes, the gallery's ready. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to see a lot of images. And I think that with all of that pressure that I think the average person probably feels when they get a gallery of photos, just remember that that pressure is going to probably impact like how you feel about yourself in some of those pictures. Take a peek, go live your life, come back and look at them again in a couple of days. You might find that ones that you thought you didn't like are fine or are good or end up being your favorite photos,
Yep. And even giving yourself the space to say like, okay, I'm ready to open up these pictures. Like we tell our wedding clients all the time, like pop a bottle of wine or champagne.
Yeah, I love it.
Glasses. Right. Do it with each other. But on the other hand, like I've done it. I've looked through photos and been like, okay, how does my arm look? Oh my goodness, what does this look like? Like, did I end up getting that angle? Why? And I'm like, wow, I'm not even going into this trying to like have an open mind to see. I'm literally intentionally, whether I shouldn't say intentionally, unintentionally or intentionally coming into it to find faults. Like we would never do that to our friend. We would never do that to our children. And so why am I doing that to myself in this photo? And I'm giving grace to all these other people and seeing all the beauty and everything else. So trying to recognize that and pause and be like, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go whatever, or I'm going to look at these photos with someone who loves me and knows me because I need to hear that, not just the dialogue in my head.
Totally. And sometimes someone who knows you and loves you will say, oh, I love this picture of you. And in your mind, you're thinking like, I didn't like that picture. Like, I thought
So
that was
ask
a
why
Yeah.
versus like, no, you don't. No,
Yeah.
you're right. I don't love that. Like,
Right, like,
why?
yeah, and I think sometimes images, like, capture your essence, and someone else who really sees you
Yeah.
can see that. I loved getting to take photos with you all for like professional photos for my website and the podcast and everything. And I think something that's so funny and applies to this is that I don't do serious faces very well. And like that, comes through like really quickly, where in the pictures, I either need to be like smiling or laughing. Like it's like there or there. But if I try to do like a serious face, like I look so
Something's
mad.
wrong. Yeah.
Like it's like something like emergent has happened. And like it's not, it doesn't feel like me. It doesn't look like me. Like it is not that I don't want to say like it's inauthentic. I'm sure my face looks like that sometimes. But it doesn't, it's like not, I don't feel like it is like really like my essence. And
Yeah.
I love that you all encourage like me to laugh in pictures and to let that, come through. Whereas I'm sure other people maybe are like more, more stoic or,
Sure.
and a more serious face like does capture them in
Right.
their essence. And it's not one size fits all.
Right.
Mhm.
And often we come in assuming that we've compared ourselves to all these other people, or all like, what does a good family photo look like? Or what does a good professional headshot look like? Are there some universal factors that as photographers we do apply? Absolutely. But for the most part, we have to remind ourselves, and like, great example, you can put this in your own body image, but we've had wedding clients be like, I'm going to send you a gallery of photos that I love, or my Pinterest board. And we're like, awesome. And we're in Columbus, Ohio, and maybe the wedding's in Columbus, Ohio, and they send us photos from like the coast of California or in the mountains of, Colorado, where the
Mhm.
everything is different. The color, the environment, all of these things. And it's like, I have to be like, what is it that you love about that photo? Because there are certain things that, guess what? We're in Columbus, Ohio. So there will be no mountain range.
Right.
There will be no coastline. Lake Erie does not come close. Like, whatever it might
But also
be.
like usually if you have the time, and it takes time to really drill down on like what it is that someone is gravitating towards in those pictures, more often than not always, more often than not, the thing that they're after is that feeling of relationship that you're seeing in that picture and you're appreciating in all of its splendor. And what I love being able to do is remind people as we're making it, like, hey, if we're trying to get a frame for frame copy of this picture, we will never be able to get it, because what we're trying to do is copy something, when what they did is they created a moment and then they photographed that moment. And so if you're after this, the way we have to do it is we have to build a version of this that is going to look somewhere over here. But we're going to create our own version of it. We're not going to copy it. And copying will never get you to that point.
It does make me think, you remember
Wow.
those like Instagram reels where it's like 3 kids recreating their childhood photo, like one's in a diaper hitting someone with a hat. Yeah, right. And like doing all of that. It's funny to recreate it exactly because that moment was so original. And I think that really is where, and it only works because of the time lapse of it all, but it's the originality of that moment and the authenticity that truly catapults that whole idea.
Oh, such a beautiful thought and such a beautiful perspective, that when you try to copy something that really is original, like it's never going to feel authentic. And what makes an image so special is that it is that original moment. It is that feeling. It is that connection that we're so drawn to, that feeling.
So I had a second to think about it. And I found a lyric that I wanted to share with y'all.
For those of you listening, he's holding up a record, a Mumford and Sons.
This is one of my favorite albums. It's Delta by Mumford and Sons. It has so many beautiful, deep, and hard songs on it. Like that, not like rock and roll hard, but like emotionally deep and thoughtful.
Also, this particular album is connected to a certain season of life that had a lot of emotions involved.
Yeah.
So
So for us, I think even more so perhaps, but the well, we don't need to get into the ethos of
That'll be
Shelton.
another
Like,
podcast.
yeah, all right.
We listen to the author.
But anyway, so
the
there's
musician.
this one song on there that the first time listening through the song or the album, it almost is easy to gloss over because it's a beautiful love song, a song called Rose of Sharon. And then you digging into it a little bit more, you find out that it's not a romantic love song. It's a song sung to their kids. And oh my gosh, like it's, so here's the lyric. And I think I would use this photographically as just a way to recenter and re-pull you back on the moment of having a picture that's about you loving on your kids. And it says, an excerpt, if you will. When it's said and done, I'm yours forever. Like I said, I'm done. I'm yours forever. I'll surround you with a love too deep for words, hold you from the world and its curse. So long as I have breath in my lungs, as long as there's a song to be sung, I'll be yours and you'll be mine. Ever our lives entwined, my Rose of Sharon.
That was so beautiful. Thank you both for being here today. This was a wonderful conversation. I could talk to you two forever and ever. And I feel so
Same.
grateful that I get to share one of our many heartfelt conversations with the unmeasured listeners. Thank you both so much for being here today. I love you.
Thank you,
Thank
Simi.
you.
We love you too.